Hello everyone. Welcome to the second episode of the Psi-Comm podcast series. Today we have with us Dr. Anandita Pan, a faculty from our very own Department of Humanities and Social Sciences. Dr. Pan has been working extensively on caste and gender studies in India. Recently, she wrote a book titled Mapping Dalit Feminism Towards an Intersectional Standpoint, which is what we're going to be talking about today. This book aims to develop a standpoint that looks at how Dalit women are affected by the simultaneous functioning of caste and gender systems. It attempts to give us a critical understanding of various forms of caste and gender-based oppression. Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ishita and Vedant, for the invite. It's a really good pleasure to be here with you both.
We're really delighted to have you here, ma'am. First off, ma'am, congratulations on your book. We'd love to know your take on intersectional feminism and, according to you, what it means and how it's different from mainstream feminism.
Right. So, intersectional feminism, if we think about it, the term itself is what differentiates it from mainstream feminism. So, what happens is, feminism, when we think about it, it takes into consideration gender as its main category of analysis. So, gender in the sense of difference between man woman, difference between male female. So both the sexual categorization, such as male female, the biological difference between these two categories, or the way culture constructs male female to become man or woman, because through the ideas of masculinity, femininity, the way we dress, the way we speak, the way we behave. So the way man and women are created to be different from each other, that's what constitutes to be very simply speaking, the basis of gender. And also the idea of feminism, that it depends on the way gender differences function, in the sense of how whenever gender constitutes these binaries of male and female, one group, which is male, is always put in a hierarchical higher order than the female category, which is always put in the lower category. So that is, so if we think about it, feminism in that way, it goes for a single axis sort of analysis. Whereas intersectional feminism intends to focus on gender not just as one single unit, but as something that also involves many other things within. So, for example, if we, when we talk about Dalit feminism, it takes into consideration caste as a category crucially functioning along with gender. So it's not like all women are affected similarly. So what intersectionality tries to show is that there's a term, the specificity of oppression. So specificity of the oppression refers to the idea that there are different categories of women, different categories of people who are affected by caste, gender, religion, class in a different manner. It does not mean that somebody else who is facing caste oppression will be the same as a Dalit woman faces it, or an upper caste or a non-Dalit woman faces it. So intersectionality talks about how multiple axes of oppression are coming together and creating this specific kind of subordination among Dalit women. So that is what differentiates intersectional feminism from mainstream feminism per se.
That is really insightful, ma'am. So, how long have you been studying Dalit feminism and how did you decide that this would be your topic of interest?
Right. So this is actually, one of the, as I mentioned in my book also, this entire project of writing, this book has also been a very, personal project as well. Along with being an academic project, it's also something that influenced me a lot to grow as a person. So I had intended to work on feminism initially during my PhD days. Then, as part of my coursework, I came across this article by Sharmila Rege. It's titled "Dalit Women Talk Differently," which was published in 1998, and I realized that Dalit feminism is a very new framework and very new area which not many people were talking about, and there was a huge lack of scholarship. And that led me to realize that whenever we are thinking of feminism, we are still kind of stuck with class and gender, or we are still banking upon Western models of feminisms a lot, African feminism, or American feminism or French feminism. All these models we are banking upon. But what about things that are germinating within India and affecting us for thousands of years? So this very specific experience that of caste, that is India calls it a very specific kind of experience of its own, that is very unique to India, and that is something that continues to persist throughout our lives, whether it's the social structures or whether it's the literary reimaginations. In all spheres we see the huge impact of caste. And as I was doing my research, that is also the time when many Dalit women's autobiographies and writing were actually getting published in English. So the translations were also becoming very popular. Previously, they were mostly limited to the regional language. So I thought that was the very specific time that I could start talking about it. And so much more has happened since then and is still happening, that actually the relevance of the issue, relevance of the book is even more prevalent now that we are sitting in 2021. So many has things have happened, and we are continuing to see the very ugly sides of caste and gender based oppression. So it's we can no longer differentiate academia and activism. So writing is part of activism. Dalit writers and Dalit women writers have repeatedly said this, that their writing is activism. So just because we are in the academia, we can no longer talk about or maybe refuse to talk about things that are happening in front of us. Necessity is what created a huge drive to go ahead with this topic.
Ma'am, so can we talk a bit about your journey while writing the book? Could you share some interesting anecdotes that you came across or any stories that you would like to share?
Right. So one of the things that I'd like to share is, as I was doing the research, the first obstacle that I faced was lack of material, so lack of resources out there. So many a times, things that were even published in English were completely inaccessible. So I had to go to various lengths to collect them from authors, but they were very helpful. So the authors themselves sometimes gave me the photocopies or even sent me the scanned copies of their material. So that was very helpful. So that was one of the first things that I realized, that why there is a dearth of material in this area, and why we need to like almost like spread the word about it. And the second anecdote that I'd like to share is the very idea that a question that repeatedly comes to me even now when I go to conferences or talk to other people is that, can someone or can a non-Dalit speak about Dalit? That is one question that appears repeatedly, that who can speak for whom. Okay. Because there is always this problem. We have this article by Spivak, Gayatri Chakrabarti Spivak, where she says that usually what happens when the Western people came to India, they we have writings like by Max Muller, who represented Kalidasa's Abhigyana Shakuntalam by removing some of the obscene, so-called obscene parts from the Sanskrit text, and representing as something that is much more purer. Okay. So the version we get is basically how these authors from the West claim to represent Orient in a way that they know better than us, because of their location and because of their powerful position that they're in. So similarly, whenever we think about Dalit politics or Dalit feminism, this question has become very crucial. That on the field it's the Dalits who are practicing it, but in the academia it's the non-Dalits who are claiming to speak on behalf of Dalits or Dalit women. So how do we erase this kind of the, how to put it, the way that claim of authenticity or speaking on behalf of someone else? So one way of doing it is to be conscious of our own positions, because I have asked the same question to myself, to my supervisor, that how to be consciously, how to consciously refrain from speaking on behalf of the Dalit women. So one of the ways is to understand one's own position as a researcher, that have I experienced those same things as a Dalit woman? And if not, then I should not impose my own views, my own stereotypes on the people I'm talking about. Rather, I should begin my research from the experiences of the Dalit women. So we need to acknowledge the authenticity and the originality of their experience, and go for a much self-reflexive process where we are also understanding our own position vis-a-vis Dalit women's position and the privilege that we have, and then go ahead with it. And one more thing, the which we should also remember as researchers is, just because some issue is experienced by someone else, if we refuse to speak for it, what happens is, we kind of restrict the scope of Dalit feminist politics only to Dalit women. It does not get an opportunity to grow. Instead, what we really should be doing is that, as non-Dalit women, we need to understand our own privileges, and also understand how our politics can merge with their politics and go hand in hand, so that a complete annihilation of oppression can happen. Because this is going to benefit a caste gender based intersectional lens, is going to benefit many more people, and not just women or Dalits. So it is going to benefit all Dalit people, all women of different categories. So once we understand that, we all need to go for a solidarity based, affinity based kind of politics. That is the only way of finding an answer here.
Thank you, ma'am. What I'd like to ask next is, what are some of the toughest obstacles or challenges that you faced while trying to steer this project into fruition?
So the one of the biggest obstacle was basically to as I mentioned, interact with people, and making them understand at many levels that why talk about Dalit feminism, why talk about difference, and why not just put it within the broad category of feminism, or within the broad category of Dalit politics, so to say. What is the relevance of this area? Why, because a lot of research, when I was actually writing or my thesis or even the book, a lot of research was going on in the areas of literary writings by Dalit women. So many a times these questions came as to, why are you suddenly doing it? Again, the identity politics based things. You are, are you going to speak for the Dalits? You are not a Dalit, so how can you claim to speak on behalf of the Dalit women? So that was one of the biggest challenges. And what I realized in the process is, I consciously made it a point to interact with the authors I was dealing with, I was talking about. And I realized that it lacked mainstream attention tremendously, except for a few books, Baby Kamle, Bama, and maybe P. Shivakami, and a couple more here and there. Dalit women's writings really lack mainstream attention. And another obstacle that I faced was the question that whether this academic attention will bring about any change in their politics. Because you are not going and standing on the streets and shouting slogans and being a part of their activism. So how are you going to contribute anything at all? So that was another big question. And as I gradually realized that this change in consciousness, how to build consciousness about certain issues, they obviously begin on the road, yes, along with the activism, but they also begin within the classrooms, when students think about these issues from a very early age. When students also learn to, research scholars read the theoretical articles, just as it happened to me personally. I Before that, I was not aware of the micro transitions that were there, or microaggressions that were there, prevalent, casteist aggressions, such as in the urban sector we claim that we don't really have caste practice at all. But then we get to see that the person who can, our housemates, we have different sets of containers for them to eat, different plates and different glasses. So that realization, as teachers also, I feel that if we are conscious about the way in which caste and gender function, and if we teach the students that, see, this is something that you can be, the pioneer of change, you can go and spread the word to 10 more people, and even if one person learns from it, that would be a huge change. So these are some of the things that I realized are a huge challenge, especially working in the academic circle, that how are you even claiming to bring about a change when clearly we should go for political or electoral sort of policy changes at a much larger scale. So I realized that all these policy changes also need to go hand in hand with change within us as people. Then only something bigger will happen.
Thank you, ma'am. Could you tell us a little bit more about communities other than Dalits where intersectionality is crucial, and how an intersectional approach could help us in understanding better the problems that they face?
Absolutely. So, intersectionality is a very useful device which actually originated with, Black feminism, because the way race and gender come together. So, what Black feminism pointed out is the idea that, when we talk about racism, it's mostly Black whose concerns are taken into consideration. And similarly, when we talk about feminism, it's white women whose concerns are becoming more prominent. So in the process, Black women's concerns are kind of thrown out of the window. So Black feminism actually emerged as an intersectional category of analysis. Similarly, in the Indian context, we can think about the ways in which gender and class, or gender and religion, interact with each other. So some of the ways, we already have seen in 1982 the Shabano case with reference to gender, or gender and class have been a concern for a long time among people, among mainstream feminists, in fact. So with the communities such as Manushi, Womanist Party of India, the Seva organization created and conducted by Ila Bhatt. So these are some of the ways in which mainstream feminism has actually tried to talk about class and gender. And with reference to religion and gender, we have the Shabano case, which has repeatedly tried to invoke the difference of that women face, that how Muslim women, especially their Muslim personal law, there was a lot of conversation regarding that. So with reference to the personal law, Muslim women's condition is very different from non-Muslim women. So that specificity of understanding. So intersectionality actually helps us in recognizing these specificities and these differences, and why feminism needs to have a much broader politics and not just gender as a single category of analysis.
Thank you, ma'am. So, what are some other areas apart from feminism where you think we should adopt an intersectional point of view?
Right. So I think that feminism, of course, is one of the ways in which it has changed our idea of looking at gender, looking at people completely. But some things that simultaneously, we can look at are, first of all, caste itself can be looked at in an intersectional manner, especially when we think about caste and class. So, for example, certain professions are restricted only for the Dalits, okay, and certain professions they also come with a lot of stigma. So, sewage cleaning, or cleaning of the roads, or even cremating of the dead bodies. All these things are traditionally casteist professions, which also lead to lack of wages. So we can definitely look at caste, the category itself, in an intersectional manner. We can also, all the other structures we have, for example, religion, that can also be a very interesting analysis vis-a-vis caste. So recently we have huge work going on in terms of Christianity and caste, and we see that even after conversion in the Indian subcontinent, caste is a perpetual factor even among after the Dalits get converted to Christianity. So they have different churches, different practices, they have different areas to sit within the church. They are not allowed to share the same space along with the upper caste converts. So these are some of the ways we can see that intersectionality is one of the greatest needs of this time, that even if you are thinking about any types of policy change or any type of change, social change actually. So we really need to talk about intersectionality.
Ma'am, so could you talk a little bit about what sort of solutions you envision to the problems that we see today, such as the divisions between different castes that you mentioned? What sort of a world would you envision once we do have an understanding of the problems that different castes face?
Right. So, the change that I envision right now is basically it has to come from a very grassroots level where we are not, you know, see, we have had a history of caste and gender based oppression for thousands of years, since the beginning of human civilization, probably. So, these problems are so deep rooted, it's probably even foolish to claim that it will go away in a decade or so. It won't. So what we need to do is, I feel we need to begin at whichever level we are at, whether we are, at the school level, okay, some consciousness regarding how caste system has been perpetuating within us. So there is a wonderful study I recently came across with reference to racism, okay, that is being conducted in schools where they're showing pictures, and then they're seeing, and children, they have to click on who is a good person, who is a bad person, and based on their racial profiling, mostly the photos with lighter skin color, they are being voted as good. The ones with darker skin color are voted as probably bad. Okay, so if we do some exercise like this from school level on, then there is a huge. I'm sorry about the rain. It's very noisy. It's raining. Yeah. So then I think probably there is a huge possibility of some change to happen, because and I'm speaking mostly because I am a teacher. So that is one of the ways in which I can claim to have some kind of say on this matter. So consciousness needs to be ingrained from the very childhood, because that's when children learn, that's when children start talking to other children. Okay, because in schools also we see that even teachers or parents tell us to make friends with certain types of people. We have a specific type of friend circle. We don't really mingle with everyone else. So that sort of change needs to come, and early education about caste system is very much important.
And ma'am, what about adults or people who've already grown in the system that we already have and who've already learned the things that our schools have been teaching for years, and people who come from a position of privilege? How can those individuals make a difference to this problem?
So I think that for the adults especially, it has to be a very conscious practice. So for example, we first need to unlearn the things we have learned. The process of unlearning is very important. That whatever things we have considered to be natural, considered to be completely commonplace, those things need to change. We should understand that some of the practices, like even there's a very famous quotation by one of the authors, where he says that the way in which someone calls chadal, chudel, something like that, some of the terminology, we very unconsciously keep speaking about it. So those stereotypes need to be consciously erased from our minds. We need to read more. We need to understand more. So unlearning and relearning, that should be a process for us adults at any stage of life. Unlearn and relearn.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, what I'd like to know is, how has your experience been ever since your book has come out? How was it received, and did it go as per your expectations?
So the thing is that this book, actually I published it with a lot of hope and a lot of fear at the same time, because more than anything else, I just wanted to I was just really hoping to see that people at least start talking about some issue. So even if there are comments about some of my readings or literary articulations or readings of films, the moment that I said that people start talking about it, that's the biggest gain. So far, I would, I'm actually very much overwhelmed by the positive responses I have been getting, especially from the students who have been reading about it. So many of the students have informed that they it's the very first time that they started thinking about caste and gender in this manner. So this is, I think, is the biggest gain that for me, that they can, they have something that in a language that they can understand, because academic, language can often be very jargonish. We have academic writings which are very complex, and especially in literature and all, very complex and very, mired with words that are not really accessible by the people. So I consciously chose to write this book with the idea that many people will be able to read it and understand. So I am very happy that even to for a little extent, I'm happy that it was actually successful.
I'm very glad to hear that. Congratulations on the book and congratulations on it being received so well. So, what other interesting stuff do you plan on working on now?
Right. So, one of the areas that is less explored in the book is the intersection of caste and religion, and especially caste and Christianity. So, currently, one of my students is working on caste and Christianity, and we are exploring this area even further and seeing how we can take it to a much deeper and a much different level, and see how caste and gender or other intersections along with caste and gender works in different fields, and how those regional specificities are also very important in this research. So we are going for that kind of reading currently.
That sounds really interesting. I would really look forward to learning more about that as well. Thank you for joining us today, ma'am. This was definitely very insightful and enlightening. Would you like to give us any closing comments?
Right. So, first of all, thank you for inviting me here. And I am really glad to see that all our students are so much enthusiastic to learn things beyond the books that are prescribed in the courses. And that should be the spirit, within us, that uh, irrespective of whichever stream we are in, whichever language we are reading, or whichever language we speak, or whichever culture we practice, sensitivity and sensibility towards others is something that we should really nurture within ourselves and practice it consciously. So thank you everyone, and yeah, keep that in mind. Good luck to everyone.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm sure this podcast, as well as your book, would go a long way in making sure that people
Yes.
explore this topic more in depth. So, thank
Thank
you for
you.
joining us today. We hope you have a great day ahead. And
Yes.
for those who haven't already, please go check out the first episode of this podcast series about AI-enabled crowd and mask monitoring system. Please don't forget to keep an eye out for the July edition of Chrysalis. We have a lot of cool stuff coming up. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.